People do a lot of different things for Lent. Some people do nothing. Other people give something up. Still more will take something on. And I don't know if the hope is that that new way of life will continue after Easter or not, but for me, it is an opportunity to try and build a habit I have wanted to engage in. Habits don't just happen because you start doing them. You have to practice. You have to be intentional. New ways of doing things can be learned, but you have to put in the work. Which means sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do. When I talk a lot about L'Arche. L'Arche is an international federation of homes and communities that honor the gifts of adults with and without intellectual disabilities. And the community I lived and worked in for 5 years in DC was a home. And it taught me so many things, and it taught me those things so intentionally. And so I talk about it a lot because it has really formed who I am as a purpose over 5 years of practice and effort and mistakes and trying again. I developed skills that I now treasure deeply. And one of those skills was their structure for how to give and receive feedback. It's for someone who's neurodivergent, as I am, it was really beautiful and helpful to me to have the steps for communication spelled out to me explicitly. There's so much in our communication that is implicit, that it was a real gift to be told exactly what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to do it, when I was supposed to do it, and to know that everybody else had the same guidelines. So we had this step-by-step process of giving and receiving feedback, because the goal in L'Arche was not to assign blame or to find fault, but to do better the next time. And so when you saw someone do something or saying something or engaging in a habit that was not as beneficial, you were encouraged to be direct with them and say, hey, the step one is first to examine yourself. Am I reacting to this because of my own stuff? Or I'm reacting to this because it is actually something that needs to be different? Does it actually matter if this person is doing it, or does it just bother me? And when you are caring for other people, when you are responsible for other people's daily safety, it's really important to be sure about these things. Then step 2 is to ask, can I give you feedback? And now this is the important part of that. You can't say no. You can say not right now, and then say next time. But you can't say no, because we have to be able to communicate. We have to be able to have conversation. We don't have to always agree, but we have to be able to talk about it. And so then the next step would be to use I statements. When this happened, I felt this. When this happened, I saw this. That comes across less accusatory and less condemning and more friendly and more geared towards what can we do better next time. And the other person receiving the feedback is encouraged to hear that, to respond to it as calmly as possible, and then to take those together. Those two people build a plan. How can I help you do differently? Or you convince the person that you don't need to do differently. But it's part of the conversation that a plan comes up. And I've seen this plan work miracles, but it didn't work miracles from day one. When they taught this to us on a regular basis, probably about quarterly, they made us stand up and practice it with each other. Which, if you've ever done one of these things where you have to like go through a script in a group setting, any kind of retreats often do these, sometimes corporate things often do these where you have to practice. And it's awful. It's so awkward and weird, and I'm not an actor, and I don't like, either I convince myself it's real and then I'm suddenly upset with this person for something that didn't happen, or I just can't get into it. But it's just so uncomfortable. And the unfortunate truth is that it's deeply effective. Because when you are in the moment, whether it's a moment of crisis or whether you're like me and anytime you have to be direct with someone, it's a little bit of a crisis, your adrenaline's pumping. Your brain is on autopilot. It's the, fight or flight, kind of instinctual response. And in order to not respond with fight or flight, you have to practice a different way of being when you're not in what, in Myers-Briggs they call in the grip. When you're not feeling things so strongly that you're not able to use your frontal lobe as other theories suggest. And so you have to practice it at other times, and even though it's awkward and weird, you do it. And you have to practice both sides too. You have to practice giving the feedback. You also have to practice the process of receiving it. In agreeing to be part of this community and agreeing to do this job, we have agreed to engage in that process. And so if you go to your supervisor or someone else and you start complaining about it, this person and how they're always doing this, everyone's first question is going to be, have you talked to them directly? And through that, the process is reinforced, and we try over and over again, and it goes imperfectly. One time I did it, and the person was like, I feel like your feedback's a little bit more about what's going on in your heart than about what I did. And they were kind of right, and also kind of not right, but it does happen. We're all people, and we have days. But it required practice on both sides because it's a very vulnerable thing to give feedback, and it's a very vulnerable thing to receive feedback. So you need a few things going into it. You need to know that the other person has the same expectation as you, which is why we all learned it. You need to know that the other person has the same trust in the system, in the process. And so that's why we all practiced it together. So you might see where I'm going, but I'm going to keep doing it anyways. Another thing that I experienced at L'Arche was the process of washing people's feet for a paycheck. I had come from working retail, and retail is toxic and abusive, and it really messes with your brain. And so I show up to L'Arche, and it is like I have encountered an oasis in the desert. My very first week there, after a week of being yelled at because I improperly wrapped a toaster oven, which we weren't even supposed to wrap it, and I did for free, they took me on vacation. So like the juxtaposition, I was so grateful to be there. So before L'Arche, though, I did not participate in the foot washing exercise at church for Maundy Thursday. Feet are gross and weird, and they make me uncomfortable. I did not want to do it. But then I was at L'Arche, and I was so grateful to be there, and people were so kind and generous, and I was like, okay, if I have to wash a few feet, like, fine. And it was fine. You get used to it, it becomes less scary, it becomes less weird. But something also happens in that practice. In the sharing of life with someone, in the vulnerability and the presence to someone, you start to love them. We imagine love as this thing, this magical thing that happens to us. But it's very much something we can learn to do for everyone. Maybe not in the same way. Should not maybe love everybody the same way you love your spouse. But we can love everyone. And when you are intentional about it and you move through it with faith and with forgiveness, love can be built. Love can be learned like any other habit. And so I look up one day and I realize I know this person whose feet I'm washing, and I love this person whose feet I'm washing. I'm no longer doing it simply out of gratitude for the job or for the community. I'm doing it out of gratitude for the person in front of me. And after one of those people passed away, and I went to my first Maundy Thursday service, and all the readings were about death and love and loss. And I just started weeping, just drenched, like freaking everybody around me out, crying. And for the first time, I was not uncomfortable to go up and wash a stranger's feet. Because I had practiced the vulnerability, because I had practiced the action, even in the grip of my grief, I was able to show up. That is why every Sunday we do communion, to remind ourselves what community feels like, even when we're not feeling it. And then we practice the very intimate and vulnerable experience of washing one another's feet. A difficult experience as the washer and as the washee, but it gets easier every time you do it. It gets a little bit more like love every time you do it. Jesus is about to die in the most painful, brutal, and humiliating way that the people of the time could imagine. It is the way that they punished the rebellious. It was more than just putting them to death. It was making an example of them. And his last thoughts before he would do this were the people he loved the most in the world. His disciples who he had shared life with, shared meals with, shared highs and lows, water into wine, whatever is going on in Simon Peter's head that day, storms and fleeing towns, and loaves and fishes, all these shared experiences, all these practices, and still there were barriers, still there were fears. You can't wash my feet. You're Jesus. And maybe part of me is not certain what that means, but it means something. You're important, and important people do not kneel at less important people's feet. And Jesus says, of course they do. Everyone kneels at everyone's feet. And so today we will come and we will wash each other's feet, and we will sit, and you'll get to see how my pinky toe looks a little wonky, and the bunion and all these things. You'll get to see this very vulnerable side of each other, and we'll practice caring for each other so that when we're in a crisis or in the grip or distracted or grieving, we will know what to do because we have practiced. And we will love one another the way that Jesus has loved us. Amen.